Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. What's your good name?
Chathriya, sir.
Chathriya. So this is for the first time we are interacting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's start from your basic introduction. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. So my name is Chathriya Kevin. I'm 24 years old. I'm from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. I completed my schooling from Good Shepherd School in 12 board exam. Subsequently, I pursued my undergraduation from Lady Shriram College in BCom Honors, where I was elected as the General Secretary of the Students' Union. After which, I was chosen to represent my college in the National University of Singapore for an exchange program. After that, from 2019, I began preparing for civil services. So I got selected in 2022 and I was allocated the Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Indirect Taxes. So right now I'm undergoing training at the National Academy of Customs and Indirect Taxes in Faridabad.
Okay. And what about your hobbies and interest areas?
So my hobbies include scribing, volunteering for animal rescue, traveling, and focus meditation.
So you went to Singapore as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Or for how many months or weeks or days?
It was a 6 weeks program, sir.
6 weeks program. That is huge. So what you have learned out of those 6 weeks of your training at Singapore?
So one major thing that I learned was the difference in the education system of Singapore compared to how it is done in India. So I got to witness that the whole system is very much practical and outcome oriented. And it is also in such a way that only the top 5% of qualifying candidates get into the teaching profession in Singapore. So they have streamlined their process so well that their education system stands out compared to the rest of the countries of the world. So that is one major thing that I learned. And secondly, the kind of governance that is done in Singapore, the maintenance of law and order, the safety that they ensure for their citizens, all of this was a great learning for me, sir.
Okay, and anything you have learned out of the infrastructure of Singapore?
Yes, sir. So Singapore is a very planned city. I understand that it is much smaller compared to India, but they have planned it in such a way that it includes the capitalistic growth aspects as well. There are many industries. There are a lot of trees and greenery space combined with the buildings and construction areas as well. So it's sort of a sustainable model wherein we give space for the social and ecological aspects along with the economic growth as well, sir.
Okay. Okay, tell me any 2-3 things which India as a country or the governance of India can learn from Singapore, other than the one you mentioned, like education and all.
So one major thing is that we have to focus on the kind of laws that we have in our country. So for instance, in Singapore, the anti-corruption laws which they have implemented are very strong. So I feel that since corruption is a major problem in our governance, in our institutions, we can learn from Singapore in this aspect to ensure that we have a very clean and progressive government. So that is one aspect. And secondly, Singapore has utilized its strengths in such a way that it balances its weaknesses very well. For instance, though it is a very small island nation, the major part of its revenue comes from its ports and international trade. So the kind of investment climate that they have provided for the industries there, the low taxation rates for the corporates, the economic freedom, the kind of land policies, etc., all of which have ensured its tremendous growth for the past few decades. I think this is something that we can learn in terms of the economic growth of our countries.
Good, great. Haven't you measured about the cleanliness of Singapore? It's very famous for its clean cities.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is that is one aspect which actually stands out, and that essentially gives you the feel that you are in a very advanced and developed nation compared to the third world or developing countries. So that is the major aspect that we should.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned that Indian governance can learn from Singapore. The major one thing is related to the corruption.
Yes, sir.
In your life, before you joined the IRS, have you ever encountered the case of corruption in which somebody demanded bribe from you?
So no, sir, not personally.
Then how can we say that in India corruption is a major problem? Have you seen any experience, or if you're nearby or any near ones and dear ones? Well, why it is such a general perception that in India there is huge corruption?
It is just that whenever we come across any sort of newspapers or media articles, we tend to know a lot of incidents. And nowadays, through social media, also there are incidents where the officers are recorded on camera, wherein they are asking for bribe, and even to very poor people. So I think with the advance of technology and media, we get to know this. And sir, since my father is an IAS officer, he has told me about various incidents which have happened in the government regarding corruption, and how officers demand bribes and how they get caught because of that. So I think these through some of these ways, I have learned that corruption is majorly
Okay,
happening
so
in our
tell me, according to you, the technology has decreased corruption in general in the society, or it has created new ways of taking corruption?
Sir, I wouldn't say it has necessarily decreased as such, but I feel that it has found new ways. For instance, that since technology is advancing and we have newer ways of corruption, we have, for instance, there is a tax evasion, there is use of black money, there are hawala transactions, money laundering, terrorist financing. These kinds of high-level crimes, and they are associated with basically a nexus between the government and these sort of organized crimes. So I think it is taking a different route rather than just the older form of cash transactions or something of that sort. So,
Okay, related to this, and you're also an IRS officer working with customs and excise. Tell me one more thing that according to me, I haven't changed much changes in on the road in the market with respect to the before GST and after GST. And even after GST, we have seen cases of a lot of input tax credit frauds which are happening, maybe to the tune of 1,000 crores as well. What, according to you, are the two, three basic things which has been changed after GST, which a common person is getting the benefits?
So one major thing that has changed after GST is that the effect of cascading of taxes that has come down largely, especially because earlier we used to have so many central as well as state government taxes, and this was a huge burden on the population, and compliance was a great issue. And since GST includes all of these taxes, I think the cascading has come down a lot, and because of which the compliance has also increased to a great extent. And this is a win-win situation for both, because the government is also, the revenue collection from indirect taxes has gone up, and even to the contribution of the rupee as well, compared to even income tax and corporation tax, GST contribution is much more. So I feel in that way it is a great benefit. And secondly, when we take the case of small taxpayers, in through GST, we are bringing about a lot of measures which can ensure that their economic growth, their compliance into the economic system is also being ensured. For instance, we have the composition scheme, wherein there is ease of doing business, ease of filing of returns. These are ensured for even the small taxpayers. So I feel these are some of the benefits which have come in after GST.
You mentioned that our ease of doing business ranking has improved. So ease of doing business is fine, but when it comes to happiness, when it comes to the freedom of press, in these indices, which are the basics of any democracy, our performance unfortunately has been declining. So what do you think is the reason behind that?
So I feel if we take the case of happiness itself, it is directly linked to the population of the country getting access to the basic facilities. So since India is a developing country, and most of its, I mean, majority of the population do not get adequate access to the basic facilities like education, health, nutrition, sanitation, all of this. I feel that only when these basic needs are satisfied is when the population can at least be satisfied, and then the next level would be happiness. Because in the case of happiness index as well, the Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, they do much better because their basic parameters and the governance structures, the access to basic facilities is much better there, and that is why I feel the citizens are much more happy, and that applies to developed nations as well. So I think that is why India is lagging behind, sir.
And what is the solution for that?
So we have to work on a citizen-centric governance and ensure that the basic facilities which every last mile citizen has to get, that it is their right, and we need to work towards ensuring that. And I feel happiness will naturally come along the way.
I'll ask few more questions from international relations. So, what happened yesterday at the international level in United Nations Security Council? What is the whole significance of 1st of April? What's changed now? Okay, I'll give you one more hint. That who is the chair now of UNSC? So Russia has got the new chairmanship. So now tell me, on the one side, the West is putting sanctions against Russia. They demanded that authoritarian country like Russia, so they levied sanctions on against Russia. And now Russia has become the head of the United Nations Security Council. How do you see these two things together, working at the same time?
So on the one hand, I feel that this is even though the West has put various kinds of sanction on Russia, it's not that the rest of the world naturally comply with such sort of sanctions, because even when we take the case of the economic sanctions or oil sanctions which the West put, India, Africa, and other such nations did not just comply with the orders or did not just follow them, because I feel each nation has its own strategic autonomy and its own national interest coming first. And in that way, I feel if when Russia is taking up the presidency of the UNSC, it is actually ensuring that the interests of the various nations are coming together. So it's not that if the West is putting sanctions, the rest of the world is complying, and because of which the UNSC also has to be dominated with such sort of interest. So this will necessarily act as a balance, wherein we can focus on negotiations regarding the Ukraine war as well, and focus on a positive outcome rather than just taking a very aggressive stand towards the whole issue.
Okay, what is your take on the Russia-Ukraine war? Whether it was the aggression of Russia or it was the aggression at the level of Ukraine?
Sir, in this particular issue, I feel though Russia has its own reasons to have taken this sort of an aggressive stance towards Ukraine. At the end of the day, I feel that the kind of measures on war taken by Russia against Ukraine cannot be considered as a right decision. So I would say that though there are like historical reasons, NATO encroaching upon various European nations, East European countries, all of this is there. Still, at the end of the day, the solution is dialogue, negotiation, and diplomacy, and never on war. So that is India's stand as well in this case, and that is why we continuously raise the issue of peaceful negotiation and peaceful discussions rather than any sort of aggression that Russia is exhibiting right now.
So, how if Russia has become the head of UNSC, the chair of USC, how that is going to balance it further? Earlier, the aggression was shown from the hand of Russia only. Now they became the head of that United Nations Security Council. So, don't you think that is going to further complicate the process rather than solving it?
So in the UNSC, we essentially have 5 permanent members. So it's not that if Russia wants to take some sort of aggressive decision, it can immediately have its hand. So we have other countries like US, UK, China, France, which can balance it. And apart from that, we have 10 non-permanent members also who can put forth their interests. And since it's the collective body, I feel that it would be a great platform for further negotiations. And yeah.
Okay. What is double veto in UN? Have you heard of the word double veto?
Sorry, sir, I am.
Okay, no problem. So, majority of your schooling you have done from which city?
From Chennai, sir. Schooling in
From
Chennai.
Chennai. Okay. Tell us the major problems of Chennai. Any three major problems according to you?
The one major problem is the constant floods which Chennai has been facing. And that is one related aspect. And secondly, the high levels of urbanization and the rural urban dichotomy compared to the other districts in Tamil Nadu. So I feel this is also an issue because I feel there should be more integrated planning compared to districts like, say, Ramanathapuram, Virudhunagar, and a highly urbanized city like Chennai. And we have the issue of slums, and these are the other issues associated with the urbanization issue. And Thirdly, I feel there is also the issue of unemployment, and this is also because Tamil Nadu, as such, is a very developed state, and the literacy rate in Chennai as well as the whole state is quite high, and the population is not able to get the kind of job that they are looking for. So essentially, there is a skill set mismatch, and this is leading to unemployment. So these are the major issues.
Okay, tell us some good things about Chennai. If we have to visit Chennai, tell us some good things about Chennai.
So Chennai actually has a wide variety of opportunities for tourists. For instance, there is the Marina Beach, which is very well known for attracting tourists. And then we also have the government museum. There is the Port St. George, which was built by the British and is currently used as the secretariat. And we also have the Kapalishwara temple. It is a very ancient temple, and it is said to be built around the 7th century AD as well. So it has this huge rainbow-colored gopuram as well. So these are some of the very attractive features that Chennai has. And also, when we look at the kind of climate that is there in Chennai, it is a very peaceful city, and the standard of living is also comparatively good when we compare it with the other highly cosmopolitan cities. The standard of living is extremely high.
Okay, tell me, what is the urbanization rate in Tamil Nadu as a state? It's more than the national average. It's less than the national average.
It is more than the national average. I'm not aware of the exact percent.
And what is the national average?
Around 33%.
Yeah, so it's almost in Tamil Nadu, it's 45 to 50%. What do you think is the reason behind more and more urbanization in Tamil Nadu?
So one major reason is that when we focus on the aspect of development, we usually associate it with urbanization. So when there is like more and more, since Tamil Nadu is one of the highly developed states, it is naturally also highly urbanized as well, because that is how we measure the growth of the development of any particular state. And also,
no, that is not the case. We don't have major development with the calculation of urbanization. Which is the index which includes urbanization as a parameter for development? Tell me any index, whether it is part of HDI. In which index urbanization is a part? Okay. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, actually, I didn't mean it like that. What I meant was that in case of, say, if a state has high amount of rural areas, we don't necessarily call it as a developed state. So only when a state, say Maharashtra, has a lot of urban regions, and that is why it is also known as the highly developed state. So in the normal common parlance, when we say development, we usually associate it with highly urbanized states. That is how I meant.
Do you also agree with this thought process that development means urbanization?
No, sir, I don't agree with that. So I feel that is the reason when we say economic development, we usually focus on GDP, GST growth, and all of this. And but that is not actual development. Actual development is inclusive of the human development, the ecological development, and the holistic growth of a particular region. So I feel that is when we can actually say that the area is developed.
Okay. Okay, my last question is, anything else which you want to share with us?
No, sir, not really.